Hey, and we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our fourth episode of Voicing Opinions. I've got a very special guest today, whom you can, you're that side, see on the screen, Steve Phillip. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Courtney. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. I'm very conscious of my second interview this morning online, having put a summery white T-shirt on. I'm looking like a little bit like an England footballer this morning. So, but I think that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. So.
Definitely. We're still in the football spirit. Okay, so I'm really excited about this one because I've been doing a lot of talk about mental health on my own profile recently, following doing the mental health first aider course, which Steve actually introduced me to through seeing it on his own profile. So hopefully today is going to be a really interesting episode, and it's also going to provide a lot of value and a lot of awareness on a really important subject. So as usual, we're going to be going through the 3 rounds. We have got the Icebreaker Round, we've got the Delve in Deeper Round, and then we've got the Just for You, which will be questions just directed for Steve. There will be time for a Q&A at the end. So if you're watching, please feel free to drop something in the comments and say hello, and also your comments as well, and we'll get to those at the end. So are you ready, Steve?
All ready, Courtney. Fire away.
Okay, let's break the ice then. First question. You finish this show, you step out of the room, and you find out you've won £10 million. I mean, it's a dream scenario, I think, for anybody. What is the first thing that you would do?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this in a really interesting way. I hope it's interesting anyway, because it kind of shares a vision that my son Jordan had, who we'll talk about today, when he was asked pretty well the same question by his girlfriend Charlotte, and when she asked him what he would do if he won the lottery, and she expected him to say, "I'll buy a fancy car, but have nice holidays or buy a big house," and he said, I would invest the money in a place where people can come to who are struggling with their mental health, and they can come and get well. And I never knew that story till only several months ago, and that led to me wanting to make that vision become a reality. So the same response, to be honest, if that money landed in our laps today, that's exactly where it would go.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer, actually. I think that's a key thing, isn't it? Just having that safe space, or even just for conversation, I think is so important. So I love that answer. That was very good. Okay, next one. I love this one because I just think it can bring out some funny answers. What was the last text that you sent?
Yeah, I'm going to stay really on theme here. This might be disappointing. I know it's supposed to be kind of light-hearted, but I did just check actually what was the last text, and it was to provide a link to a therapy service for somebody whose friend was struggling. So I'm sorry to start a real down level here. Hopefully the next question will lift it up a little bit. But it was, the last, and that is my life, to be honest. Many a day, the sort of messages that I'm dealing with. So it was to be able to, on a positive note, recommend a service that somebody could use whose friend is really struggling at the moment. So note to self, must get more cheerful texts.
I don't think that's a downer at all. I think that's amazing. I think that goes to show that the work you're doing is working. If people know to come to you in scenarios like that, then that's a win, in my opinion.
Good.
And third question of the first round, what is something that LinkedIn won't know about you?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I don't promote this much on LinkedIn at all these days. I used to do, but I'm a keen cyclist. I do really like my road cycling. I'm not getting out as much as I should do, but with the Tour de France running at the moment, I can lay claim to fame that in a single weekend I did climb 6 of the Alp climbs, albeit about 11 years ago now, including Alpe d'Huez and all the big Tour climbs in a weekend. So that's one of my claims to fame, and a closet drummer as well. So I drum kit in the garage to let off steam, and kind of rekindled that a couple of years ago after about 40 years of not having sat behind a kit. at all. So there we go. If the Rolling Stones can keep going at 80, hope for me still.
I love that. I bet that is so therapeutic after a hard day, just bashing on the drums.
Oh yes, yeah.
Oh,
I
try
haven't
that
told you
again.
whose faces are on the drum kits, have I? Yeah, on the
Yeah, we'll
drum.
keep that bit secret.
Okay.
As long as it's not me, we're all right.
No, definitely.
Okay, so first round boxed off. I still can't see anyone in the chat, but I can see there are people watching. So don't be one of those little lurkers. If you're here, say hello in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to go in now to the second round. Hey, there we go.
It worked.
Nick. That's it. Hi, Nick. Good to see you here. Always good to see a friendly face and to know that people are actually watching. That's a good sign, eh, Steve? Okay, so next round. Delving deeper round. So we're going to try and get a bit more of an insight into what it is you do, Steve, for those of you that don't know who Steve is. I mean, you might be living under a rock if you don't. We've got Fraser in. Hello. Love to see it. So first question in the next round. Can you explain what you do in 5 words?
Yeah, really. My job is to help stop people from taking their own lives. That's probably not 5 words, there's a few more, but essentially that's what my mission is all about now. How do I stop people getting to that point where they take their own lives?
Yeah, straight to the point. Love it. Okay, and what is a common myth within your profession that you'd like to debunk?
Yeah, I think it's something, I've learned a lot in the 19 months since my own son, took his own life when Jordan did that in December 2019, and all the myths around mental illness, and I think there are so many myths about the fact that to reach that point where you want to take your own life, that it is because you have, you're mentally unwell, and that isn't always the case. For some people, it's they just can't cope with life and what's going on for them at the moment, or it could be physical pain, or someone with a mental illness might be, dangerous, and so many myths that create the whole stigma around people wanting to talk about it. So, there are really many myths around, particularly the reasons why people take their own lives, that need to be debunked, really.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, we touched on the start about the fact that I'd attended the mental health first aider course. And that was something actually that I think really helped me in terms of stigma or misconceptions and things like that. I mean, I would have considered myself quite an open person. I'm definitely not sheltered from mental health through personal experiences, friends. I've experienced it quite a lot in different ways. But even, myself, like there were still things that I just didn't know at all. Just to share a bit of an example, one of the modules on the courses is self-harm. And that was something that, I'd heard of quite a bit about, and I'd always expected it to be something that must be drilled in to be stopped immediately, and it's really bad and all this kind of stuff. But actually, I think my course leader was Tara, and she explained that for most people, it's actually a coping strategy. And whilst it's not recommended, of course, in any way, it is actually a coping mechanism, which I never thought of it in that way. So that's in itself is kind of, a myth, if you like, or a misconception. So I think there's so many surrounding it. Even having conversations like this is really helpful.
That's a really good example. Really good example.
Definitely. Okay, next question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learnt in your career? This is a big one.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think I have to kind of go. Gosh, yeah, I had a couple of thoughts here about this one, and I think the biggest lesson is that many of the skills that I developed over the years prior to the events that happened in my life in the last 19 months have kind of equipped me for what I'm doing now. And for anyone who isn't aware, but my background was in leadership management, training, and I was a director of a leadership and management training company. I'd worked in sales for many years, and then I set up my business in social media as a speaker and consultant and trainer, particularly on LinkedIn. And many of those skills have now come in extremely useful for the work that I'm doing now. So one of the biggest lessons is you kind of develop these life skills that you don't really recognize sometimes the importance of until kind of something happens in your life and you suddenly find you can draw on them. So I think, just be aware of those skills that you have developed in your life and maybe how they could be applied for something or applied to something completely different. Has been an interesting lesson for me.
Yeah, definitely. I bet you could never have even imagined that, your career would take that complete turn. I mean, obviously, incredibly sad, experiences that led it to that. But do you feel in a way that it was a calling you didn't know that you had in you?
It clearly probably is the case. Yeah, I think without question. I was reaching a point in 2019 as we entered into coming up to December, where I'd arranged to work with a consultant who was going to help me take my business to an exit strategy in 5 years. So I kind of had the next 5 years mapped out. I thought I'd carry on with my corporate speaking, do things like that. And then boom, December the 4th, 2019, I got the call and life kind of changed completely. And now I'm kind of having to get a second wind and start a whole new career, really. But as I say, I probably have an advantage compared with many people in a similar situation, that I had a set of skills and tools that I almost felt myself going into a Liam Neeson mode, by the way, then with Taken, but a particular set of skills that I could apply in this case, obviously, to help save lives and try and make that difference that we maybe felt we weren't able to do with Jordan.
Yeah, definitely. I think what brings it home as well is obviously people on LinkedIn will have known you prior to the loss of your son, but also it reiterates that it really can happen to anyone, because in a sense, people were kind of on that journey with you as it unfolded. I mean, I remember seeing your first post breaking the news, being in the office and actually, welling up and just being like, wow, oh my gosh. And then from going to see you to doing the work that you're doing now, obviously it's incredibly inspiring, but it also drills it home that, this is happening to everybody. It's really crazy, but also very inspiring to see, the change that you are making. So that is brilliant. Okay, so next round. We're on the final round now, guys, and I can't see any questions in the chat yet. So we have got people watching still. So all of you that are watching, if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in and Steve will answer them at the end. Anything mental health related, just finding more about his story, we'd be more than happy to jump into that after this round. So make sure you drop them in. Okay, so the Just For You round. The first question we've got is, if you could narrow down, which is going to be really hard for you, narrow down your mission with the Jordan legacy to just one goal, what would it be?
Yeah, it is really about us trying to work with organizations, work with communities towards what we would call a zero suicide community. And what we mean by that is moving as close as we can do to eradicating this decision that people feel they have to make to take their own lives. We work closely, and there are many other people in the zero suicide community globally, and there are many well-documented case studies where communities and organizations have managed to work together. And as far as people known to the mental health system, have managed to get it down to zero suicides. I think that does require a collective responsibility from communities and businesses to put in place practical solutions to make that happen. That's very much what we're about, the Jordan legacy. but it needs ambition and a desire to make it happen. And I think, this desire and ambition should come from, a couple of really interesting facts that, we lost, 6,591 people to suicide in England and Wales last year. We lose one person globally every 40 seconds to suicide. For every suicide, we see another 135 people indirectly or directly impacted who are known to that person, of which a high percentage of those, almost up to 40%, will potentially go on to consider taking their own lives as a result. We've got a huge cost to society of 1.7 million, I think it is now. I just need to clarify that figure per suicide. That's what it costs our economy at the moment. So we've got lots of reasons to really take this seriously. It is kind of, if someone gets cancer or someone has a heart problem or diabetes, we've kind of got solutions and it's in the news and we do it. But somehow we've got this massive situation happening with people taking their own lives on a 40-second basis that just isn't being dealt with effectively. And when I see, not wanting to bash the government, but when I see the kind of institutionalized low ambition we have at government level, where a 5-year forward plan together with the NHS says we should aim to reduce suicide by 10% in the next 5 years, my question is, what happens to the other 90% then?
Yeah, that's a low benchmark, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it speaks volumes, the fact that, I have a very understanding employer, at Voice Power. They're very understanding, very empathetic. Since the course, they've been very much behind me and putting initiatives in place for our own business. But even myself, with that supportive network, I would still feel uncomfortable ringing in sick if I was having a particularly anxious day, and that speaks volumes. Why is mental health not as important as physical health? If I had a cold or, broke my leg, I'd have no problems ringing up and saying, yeah, I can't come in today, I'm not feeling well. So that parallel of it, just that taboo and not being accepted as much, is just like, that speaks volumes to me, I think. And that really needs to change, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think, when you look at, someone with a bad cold or flu, there are really evident symptoms to the world around you that you've got that cold or that flu, or if you've broken your leg or got any other kind of physical injury, there are going to be kind of signs and symptoms there for people to see. But with mental health, of course, they're often hidden. The reality is they're not really hidden. We just need to know what to look for. And as you mentioned with the mental health first aid course, you and I have a much better understanding of what it is we're looking for. Now that definitely might not have been that obvious before.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next question. Oh, we've just got a comment from Luke, which I'm just going to pop up there. Hi, Luke. He wants to say thanks for doing this. He's come across it randomly and thinks speaking out more about mental health should happen more. Thanks, Luke. I'm glad you're enjoying it. We do have a question from Luke, which we will come to after this round. So stay tuned, Luke. We are going to answer that when we get there. Okay, next question. What do you do to take care of your own mental health? I mean, obviously, this was something that was really drilled in on the course. So I'd be interested to know if there's anything that you go to kind of have that self-care moment.
Yeah, the answer is probably not enough. The honest answer, because I do get immersed in this work, and I was away this weekend, and I had a young guy who was struggling, considering taking his own life, messaging me from Canada. We had a lady on LinkedIn I kind of referred to, or a person referred to this in LinkedIn, who looked like that was going to happen, and we were kind of involved in that conversation, trying to get some support there. So I don't switch off enough, but one of the key things I do, my bike, cycling, I think getting out there is really important. And even last night, it was a long day, hadn't got out for a cycle, but just the wife and I just going out for a walk around the block, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just get out and do something. The other thing is I work pretty intensively during the week, but I do in the main kind of get to the weekends and say, right, let's turn this off now. And this weekend was a little unusual because of the circumstances, but yeah, just I think knowing when to stop, I'm reasonably good at that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if my wife's listening to that and going,
pop in and go, no, you're not.
Who is this person speaking? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good at that actually as well. And I think that is really important, having a job where you can switch off. But I think that was something that I was really taken aback by with the course, obviously being 2 days long. Tara, the leader at the start, said, this is going to be hard hitting. It's normal to feel this way, kind of thing. And at the start, I was like, oh, I'm sure I'll be fine. I think I know quite a bit about mental health. I'll be fine. Oh my God, both nights I cried my eyes out. And I don't know why. Like, it was really, my poor boyfriend Jay was just like, what is wrong with you? And I was just like, I just don't know. I mean, I am an extremely empathetic person, so I think obviously the contents of the course are really hard hitting, and obviously it's all day, you're taking all this kind of information in all day, so it is a lot. But I think that really was just like, wow, it really took me back. But going back to the self-care, I just took an hour both evenings just to do a bit of yoga on my own, headphones on, kind of own time, if you like, for myself. And I felt so much better afterwards. So I think just taking that time, and that's different for everyone, isn't it? It might be watching an episode on Netflix, going for a walk, going to see a friend for a coffee, anything like that, really, that just really helps you unload, I think is so, so important.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Perfect. Okay, so we're on to the last question. That's flown by. So what is one thing that you'd like to say to business owners regarding the welfare of their staff?
Yeah, really important one. And I was on a discussion panel earlier this morning, and we were talking about this very topic. And I think the most important message is that well-being is not an event. It's not an event you put on once a month or once a week. It's not about having a tick box that says we've got an employee assistance program in place, or we've now got a mental health first aider. What well-being is, it's about allowing your employees to work in a psychologically safe environment, which means that they are being managed as much for their well-being as they are for their performance. And that means you've got to have conversations. It's got to be part of everyday meetings and conversations. How are we doing today? Just before we start the meeting, let's go around the table. Where are we on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is you're absolutely rocking it today. 1 is you just really don't want to be here, and really don't want to be here. So where are we? And without getting into deep and meaningful conversations there, even a response that says, I'm at a 5 today. If I'm that manager, I want to follow up with that person afterwards and say, Courtney, can I just have a chat? You said you were at a 5 today. Tell me what's going on for you. Just what is it that's got you at a 5 and not an 8 or a 9? It's part of every day. Really has to be part of the culture and not an event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really agree on that. And actually, something that Daniel has just said there in that comment, with the idea of, man up and that kind of stuff. I think that if it's that classic saying, if you don't ask, you don't get. And, a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable going to a colleague, a supervisor, a manager, and just spilling out how they feel. And so I think asking those questions is so important, because otherwise you might not never know. And then it's that dreaded experience of, bit too late. So I think that is such a good point. And thanks to Daniel as well for mentioning that one. Okay, so that's all in terms of the questions that I've got for you today. So we have got one question coming up in the chat, which we're going to go back to. If anyone else is watching and hasn't asked one yet that they have, it's not too late. Still drop it in and we will get to it. So we're going to go on now to Luke's question. So Luke is asking, what advice would you give to someone in a position of supporting someone with mental health issue and going through a tough time? I mean, I'm sure you must get this one quite often.
Yeah, it's a great question, Luke, and it's the important question, really, because I think we all need to learn how to recognise the signs, and then take responsibility for our own well-being, of course, but also take some responsibility for those that are around us as well. So if someone is struggling, I think the most important lesson is don't feel you've got to solve the problem.
Yeah.
You're probably not equipped to, in fairness, and ultimately you may well signpost them to somebody who can. But the biggest thing you can do is to listen to what's going on. Most people, in fairness, who are struggling don't want you to go in and fix the problems. What they are looking for very often is to be able to unload and be able to talk about what they're going through. Maybe for you to reflect that back to them. So what you're saying to me, Courtney, is X, Y, Z. Is that right? Is that what's going on for you? So use what I would call active listening. So really good body language, good eye contact, leaning forward, just showing some interest, but not interrupting, not putting your own agenda, or I knew somebody else that went through this and they were fine, or they did this. Everyone's situation is different. So don't feel the pressure that you have to solve the problem. Just be prepared to listen without any form of judgment, and ask the question. Just say, look, what is it I can do to support you? How can I help you? Tell me how I can help you. And I think if you just did that, you'd be streets ahead of so many other people who really just don't know what to do.
Definitely. And something that kind of sticks in my mind, Luke, which might be helpful. I remember writing it down from the course and just thinking, oh, that would be really helpful. It was just saying something like, I think that it was along the lines of, I really don't know what to say right now, but I'm so glad that you told me. That really stuck out to me because, if someone's confiding in you with such, big issues, it's easy to feel speechless. So even just saying something simple like that and just, assuring that they've done the right thing in telling you and just listening, I think that is really important because we can't all solve all the problems, although sometimes we want to.
I think exactly. And I think just to add to that, Courtney, because I think it's a really nice way to handle that, and it is to say, look, what I can do though is I can find out ways, and I think we all need to be equipped as organisations and individuals to say, look, if someone was struggling, where would I direct them to? And that was one of the biggest challenges for me when I first shared my story. I got this huge outpouring globally from people once they read my story about Jordan. But then equally, I got lots of people who were struggling, who would get in touch and say, look, I kind of need your help. And I go, whoa, hang about, I'm not a mental health professional. How do I deal with this? So I took some advice and found out where you could signpost people to, from the Samaritans to your local GP to A&E if you're in crisis. So I got this bank of resources. And I would say to everybody kind of listening, if someone needed some help, they were either in crisis or struggling with their mental health, would you know where to signpost them? Would you be able to give them that advice and stick with them until they made that call? And I think it's incumbent on us all to know this information. Where do we go to if someone's struggling? Where can we recommend? And one of the tools, I think it's a great tool, we feature it on our website, thejordanlegacy.com, under the help resources, is something called a well-being grid. And it's just a Word document, really simple, with 4 columns. The left-hand column, you list everybody kind of in your network, from mother, father, brother, sister, whoever it would be. You list your family members. You list, you put one of the columns is right. You've got who you know, so your family, your friends, your work colleagues, and then you start moving into professional organisations. The peer groups that you might know of. Where could you go to for possible support, or who do you know? And then the other 3 columns are really, okay, who is it within your family? So it's the who column. Who is it at work specifically? And you enter their names in there.
Right.
what would they do? How would they help you? Are the other two columns.
Mm-hmm.
And if we all had this kind of well-being grid that we filled in when we were all in good mental health, not when, the time to fill that in is when we're in a good
Yeah.
place. And then we're struggling and you're thinking, right, I am struggling. Who do I go to? You pull out the well-being grid and go, it's John, or it's my brother, Bill,
Yeah.
or, whoever it would be, or it's, this organization. I remember they do this. The problem is when you're struggling is you get confused. You don't know where to go to for help. So just some very simple tools like that, can be, really helpful, even for the person that's supporting you if you've completed one of those yourself. I think we should all have that. Really, I'd love to say I filled mine out at the moment. I haven't, and need to take my own lessons probably. Yeah.
No, that sounds really helpful actually, and something as well, Luke, that might be of use in our own kind of efforts to be better with mental health at Voice Power. I created a little 2 documents, one of which was spotting the warning signs for different mental health illnesses. And then also I've got a resources document, so lists of charities, organisations, helplines that you can ring. So if you do think that would be helpful for the person that you think might be struggling, do just drop me a DM because I'll be more than happy to send that over to you as well if it's helpful. Okie doke. I've got another question for you, Steve, from Daniel. He says, do you think that we've gone down the route of telling everyone that they need a good cry and admit you're depressed rather than allowing people to say, I just feel like crap and here is why?
Right. So I need to make sure I just kind of understand the question. Yeah, I think I understand Danielle's question from the point of view of, it's not necessarily about mental illness here. It's just about recognizing that some days we have good mental health, some days we don't have good mental health. And that may just mean we're just having a bad day. And I think we need to not have to wait until someone's in that real crisis situation and breaking down for that conversation to be able to happen. I think we need to be in a psychologically safe environment. Again, I'll use that term, where I kind of feel it's all right to talk to my boss and where we say, you know what, I'm kind of struggling a bit today. And I had that exact conversation with, somebody I work closely with at the Legacy, and he just said, I'm just on the email, I'm struggling at the moment. And this is someone I wouldn't imagine to struggle. And my immediate question in my head was, what does he mean by struggle? So we spoke, we had a Zoom call, and I said, tell me what's going on. And he explained, and I thought, wow, sometimes we get that busy. We look at people we think are probably the strong ones doing okay, but they're having their own struggles. And the fact that he was able to say to me, I'm kind of struggling a bit this morning, I thought was great. Because then it allowed me to go, hang about, and before I just plow on and expect him to do this and whatever else, maybe what I need to do is just ask him what he means by he's struggling, and we had that great conversation as a result, and that was kind of a lesson to me, because going back to something you said earlier, Courtney, is you never know when it's going to come knocking on your door. You never know who it's the least likely people sometimes who are struggling. There are not the obvious suspects staring you in the eye that you could go, oh, that person is clearly the one who's likely to have a mental health problem. It just doesn't work like that at all. It affects us all at one point or another. So yeah, Daniel's point is we should just be able to have those moments where we say, I'm just not doing too well, and not wait till it gets to a crisis. Or
definitely. And I think the bit that stands out to me with Daniel's question there is and here is why part. Something that I mean, speaking personally, sometimes there's not a why. Sometimes you just feel a bit meh and you just have those days, but that doesn't always mean that you're depressed. I think you have to think of it as a spectrum. It's always up and down. Some days you might be that end, some days you might be that end. But I just think understanding what your spectrum is and your own feelings, I think, is so important in kind of understanding those feelings, isn't it, really?
I think you summed it up with those 2 nights following the mental health first aid course. You were kind of in welling up, but you didn't know why.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need an explanation at this time.
Yeah.
It just needs, I just need to tell you that I'm not feeling too good at the moment. I just kind of
Yeah.
need to be there. I
Yeah.
don't feel you've got to get an explanation out of me. Don't feel you've got to run in and fix it.
Definitely.
Just allow me that space, or just say, look, I'm here if you need me, when you're ready, and that will often be enough for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think even people individually put pressure on themselves, to understand, well, why am I feeling like this? It can be quite frustrating. Like, I don't understand it, but I think sometimes just allowing yourself to feel is a good thing. Pushing it back doesn't always help, and just taking time for yourself. I think that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's been a few people who, that I've seen interviewed and talk about this whole subject of mental health, Courtney, and they, the ones that seem to have really managed significant mental health issues really, really well are the ones that kind of didn't try and fight it, didn't try and get to the bottom of it or whatever. They kind of said, this is kind of part of me. This is what I go, and kind of accepted it as part of their journey. And some of those conversations have been really interesting for me to hear, because by accepting, okay, this is going to happen to me on occasions, this is what I go through, but it's okay, because I know I'll kind of come out the other side again, because I haven't done before. It takes so much pressure off those people than go, why am I like this? And that constant battle in your head just takes you into this spiral, and you end up even deeper into the anxiety or the depression that you're going through.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully that answered your question, Daniel. Oh, I can see. Apparently we hit the spot. So that's a good
Man.
sign.
Thank you, Daniel. Great question.
Definitely. Okay, we've got another one on here from Marco. Question for you both. Would like both your opinions on this. How do you both deal with stress outside of work in your personal lives? And how or what can you do to help relieve this? So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier on the self-care kind of question. Do you want to take the lead on this, Steve?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Marco. Thank you, and great to see the guys asking questions. This is great.
Definitely.
Outside of work. Gosh, that's interesting. I probably don't have too much stress out of work, but of course there is, I suppose, the stress of what we're still going through as a family. I think humour has always helped. I know Jordan had a great sense of humour, and most people say he picked it up off his dad, and I picked it up off my dad maybe. But and sometimes it's quite dark humour. It's kind of, we've, as a family group, we've kind of let ourselves accept at moments you can almost be inappropriate, with a bit of humor, because it's a release, and not in exactly the same way, but we had a situation, this weekend was Jordan's birthday on Sunday, the second one now without him, and his ashes are laid to rest about 80 miles from where I live in, so he's over in the northwest, near Heysham, and it also happened to be my grandson's 5th birthday, so Jordan's sister's youngest, on the same day. So this is something we deal with now every year. So we have this, in this case, little lively 5-year-old looking forward to his birthday, and yet the morning is spent standing around a gravestone. And I've got this, wonderful photograph of little Samuel standing there with a big animal balloon in front of Jordan's grave this Sunday. And it's kind of like the two opposite things going on there, which is a bit surreal to get your head around. And we know we have to go from this really quite low morning in many respects to then turning a switch on there. But it was certainly, talking about humour, we got towards the last few minutes, and we decided to play around the gravestone some of Jordan's favourite tunes on the iPhone, and we're playing this music when little 5-year-old Samuel just started busting some moves. And dancing like you wouldn't, like nobody was watching, and we just looked at him, and we just fell about laughing. He was just amazing, and so you can try and sometimes find the humour in things. It will be there somewhere, and look, it's okay. It's okay to laugh still. It's okay to find a bit of light and a bit of humour in stressful times, because I think that takes a lot of lot of pressure off. Yeah. So
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's really lovely, actually. I can imagine it's probably a blessing in disguise, if you like, to have those both very different events on the same day, because in a way
yeah,
it's kind of forcing you to look at the positives and try and spend time with each other. So I can imagine it's probably secretly quite a good thing.
yeah, it works quite well. I mean, just
Yeah.
one final comment on this point, because the first year this happened, and we were all stood there around Jordan's grave, and we were all very quiet and very tearful, and it was quite a grey, overcast morning. And after a little while, little Samuel, who had been 4 that time, kind of looked up at his mum and in front of us all said, "I'm bored. Can we go and have my party now?" And again,
Oh,
we
bless
just, the smiles cracked on everybody's faces, and the poor
Oh,
little lad, let's go and have his birthday. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a weird day, but nice that we kind of leave there and then turn the switch on
Yes,
and celebrate another life. Really, really
definitely.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I love that. Just to answer from my perspective, Marco, I think I'm better at handling workplace stress than I am personal stress. I'm very much a what I would call a flapper. You know, if something goes wrong, I'm like, So I think for me, talking to people about it who can calm me down and rationalize, because I tend not to be a very rational person if I'm feeling stressed. Look at the downside of things quite a lot as well, and what can go wrong instead of what can go right. So I think confiding in people that I know can offer me a realistic perspective is always really helpful for me. Um, but also going back to something we mentioned earlier is just allowing myself to feel how I feel and doing whatever helps that feeling at the time. Um, I love putting a bit of Netflix on, getting some popcorn and just chilling if that's how I feel. If I'm feeling like I can, I'll do a workout, I'll do a bit of yoga. But I think just doing what you feel is right is a big thing for me. So it kind of varies really, but I just kind of go with my gut and what I feel like I want to do. So hopefully that answers your question. Obviously, it's very different for everyone, but that's my kind of take on it. Looking at the comments, we don't seem to have any more, so hopefully that was all helpful to you. Luke says thank you for answering his question. It has been really fun to have you on, Steve. Thank you so much.
No,
This
thank
has
you, Courtney.
been one of my
Appreciate
favourite
it.
episodes. Yeah, I've
Good.
really enjoyed it. Um, this will be going on YouTube, guys. So I will share the link if you've missed it or you want to keep it and share with any employees or friends and family. Please feel free. And yeah, thank you so much, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you, Courtney. Thank you, everybody, for your questions as well. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a good day.